Yep,
Here,
we're on.
Here
And
we are.
the world situation has not been solved yet. We'll continue our discussion now. Just go on. We were discussing the situation in the Middle East when we were rudely interrupted by a countdown.
Oh, you mean about
And-
shooting down the airplanes?
Yeah, well, now, we don't know why the screen is, the picture is dark, but we know it's dark. As long as y'all can hear us, that's all that counts. We'll figure out why the screen is dark. It's just something that hasn't happened yet. So
But this
something's
is
got
normal.
to happen. It's got,
This
something's
is
got.
normal.
Yeah, this is.
I mean, what else do we expect when we come here?
This is better than other things that have happened, okay.
Yeah,
But see,
well-
I'm the invisible man again. You see that, you see my.
Oh, yeah. You got green in there?
Yeah, that's the green in there that's showing through it. This gives new meaning to the hollow
Tell me
man
about
theory.
green and.
Yeah, but that's your whole shirt. Your whole shirt was green.
It's just, they show the best,
He
they show
looked
the
like-
best part in my head.
He looked like a ghost. This is a haunted show, but we don't
Okay,
want it haunted by.
okay, we need to
big-
say the prayer.
Yes, we do.
We need a lot of prayer.
The country needs a lot of prayer.
Amen.
Heavenly Father, we ask you to move amongst us and to give the people an appreciation for what this day really means. Give us the strength, the wisdom, and the courage to do your will in all things. In Jesus the Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Today's Constitution Day.
Happy Constitution Day.
Yep. It was the
Did
day.
the schools teach the Constitution today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Ask your children if they got anything at all
Yeah, call
on
us.
the Constitution today.
Put that number up
And,
there. Call us.
Yeah.
We want to know if any of their children came home today and told you that they studied the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because if the school gets federal money, they're required to teach the Constitution today.
Yep, September 17th, 1787, do the math. This is the
A couple of years ago.
17th day of the 9th month of the year of our Lord Jesus the Christ, 2014. 273 years ago today, the Constitution was signed. And we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Some things that you probably haven't heard about, and then some other things that you have, hopefully. But first, I must apologize. We didn't follow through with our original plan due to circumstances beyond our control. Our guest
And her.
called me day before yesterday, tried till the last minute to find a substitute to watch her 10-year-old daughter while she was here. And Renee Powers could not. Her friend that was going to sit with her daughter had a death in the family and had to leave town. So we pray for her friend and the friend's family. But we're going to try and rearrange that and get her down here.
Soon.
To get the same rate on the airline ticket, it's got to be a month or more, or longer. So
Really?
yeah. So it'll be probably 1st of November, in that time frame. We'll still plan it around the show and the meeting so she can make both events. So we have to muddle onward tonight, and we've got lots to talk about, particularly with the Constitution.
Yep.
But in the meantime, tomorrow night's meeting, we'll be discussing the functioning of miscellaneous kinds of rifles and psychological preparation for trouble, not just trouble in a big way, but trouble when you go to the mall, trouble when you go to a movie theater, etc. Go into your car after work. Things, everyday things that can save your bacon. We'll be talking about tomorrow night. Now, We'll go ahead and get into the Constitution first, since this is the day to celebrate it, and then we'll get into some smaller things. I have here, we'll start out, this is a facsimile of the original proposed Bill of Rights. And on it, it's got something that I've talked about before, and most of your books on dealing with the Constitution do not have it, including the Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution that I'm going to read from tonight a little bit. Our Citizens Rule Book has it, the preamble to the Bill of Rights. The conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, and as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. That's in the original draft. Now, the only changes they made when these were, this document here was ratified by the states, was the original included 12 articles. The first article, Article the First, after the first enumeration required by the first article of the Constitution, there shall be one representative for every 30,000 until the number, et cetera, et cetera. That was dropped. They were elaborating on the numbers of representatives in the House of Representatives. And it got kind of convoluted and complicated, so they dropped that, apparently, is why they did it. Because it is, it's one of the longest articles of the original proposed 12. Then Article the Second, no law varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. Well, that really, that wasn't in the fourth, that wasn't necessary at all. I can see why they rejected that. Then Article the Third, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And on that note, I have a quote here from Michael Bolden: going to the feds to fix problems created by the feds is as futile as it is dangerous. That's the problem with that last one of our 5 individual rights that are contained in the first article of the Bill of Rights as it was ratified, okay, is that the petition for redress of grievances should have been fairly straightforward, but in their infinite wisdom, Congress over the years has kind of forgotten about that part. What became the Second Amendment, here Article the Fourth, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Bam. Mm-hmm. Now, what ended up happening with the Bill of Rights needs to be pointed out. First of all, remember that the Bill of Rights was ratified at the same time the Constitution was ratified. Okay? Or no, it was ratified, wait a second, let's see. No, it was ratified later, that's right. It was proposed on, it went to the states for ratification on September 17th, 1787. That's not when it was ratified. When was it ratified? The exact date. Here it is. December 15th, no, that's the Bill of Rights. Wait a minute.
December 18th.
Yeah, it should have been the same time. 1791, effective December 15th, 1791. Okay. But what wound up happening was the Bill of Rights put in correct order our most important rights, the ones contained in Article 1. Okay, again, this is one that everybody needs to understand. There's 5 rights contained in that. And a lot of folks missed it. Free exercise of religion. Freedom of speech. Freedom of the press. Right of the people peaceably to assemble. And finally, to petition for redress of grievances. Petition the government. 5 rights are contained in Article 1. Those are the rights that we use daily. Perhaps not each of us, but folks that are putting the information out for the rest of us. At the very least, on a weekly basis, we use the first one. We exercise our freedom of religion. Okay? Those are the daily rights, if you will, that we're to exercise, that we're to have available to us if we want to exercise them, I should say. Then Article 2, what became the Second Amendment, well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's if the first one is violated. And if the rest, the remaining rights are violated, then Article 2 comes into play. It's one that everybody has available to them. It says so right there. Available without infringement, i.e. nuclear-tipped ICBMs are okay for us to own. All right? Under Article 2 of the Bill of Rights. Now, this is the most important of our rights. It's not the one we use every day, but when it becomes necessary to utilize it, it becomes the number one right, the most important right. Why on Constitution Day would we start with the Bill of Rights? Because that particular document is the most important of the entire schmear, except perhaps you could make the argument that the Declaration of Independence, because of its primacy and what it ultimately did, would be more important than the Bill of Rights, or on equal to the Bill of Rights anyway. You see, there's people that want to amend the Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. And there's a thing in the Senate that's being pushed by the demon rats that would do just that. They want a constitutional amendment dealing with campaign finance, where Congress can determine how campaign finance would be accomplished.
That would be dangerous.
And see, the reason for that, of course, is the Supreme Court has been watering down some of these campaign finance rules that the Congress and the El Presidente has signed, that the Congress passed. And as George Will, he's got the co-sponsors, the 48 Senate co-sponsors, and Landrieu's not one of them. He calls them American rarities, real extremists. Now, he gets into the details of the bill and what would become an amendment if they were to proceed with it. But this would be one of those things that a lot of people would say, I don't care, go ahead and do it. Well, no, what it is, it's restricting Article 1 of the Bill of Rights as far as freedom of speech goes. Okay, you're no longer free to give to the candidate of your choice, etc., in an election situation. And the courts, rightly so, have said that is a right as guaranteed under freedom of speech. It's your way of proceeding with supporting political speech that you approve of. Well, this would serve to be the camel's nose in the tent, as it were, of limiting the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights cannot be amended. That's obvious from the preamble that I read. The Bill of Rights was passed, ratified by the states, with the express purpose of ensuring that the thou shalt nots of government were maintained. That's what the Bill of Rights are. Now, we've got some quotes here from some of the founders dealing with that. Thomas Jefferson: a Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government. Okay? Justice Hugo L. Black, in one of those typical, which I have several in this book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution, I have several quotes from Chief Justices and other members of the Supremes that sound great on the surface. This is what they have officially pronounced in various cases, etc., or in their writings, and then turned around and done something completely opposite to restrict our rights in some fashion. And Black was no exception. But he said, quote, "It is my belief that there are absolutes in our Bill of Rights, and that they were put there on purpose by men who knew that what the words meant, and meant their prohibitions to be absolutes." Well, excuse me, Black, and Black was one of those that was voting for gun control, but by his own words. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's an absolute, folks. Now, what Black has probably done, and his ilk have done in the past, is said that, well, the people in this case are not the whole people. It's not everybody. It's only the militia, because the first qualifier, which is not really a qualifier, it's just an introductory phrase, it tells you why the people keeping and bearing arms shall not be infringed. It's so that a well-regulated militia, which is necessary to the security of the free state, can exist. But the militia is not the National Guard. It is the people. It never was the National Guard. The National Guard was not set up as the militia originally. Now, some states have since replaced any and all semblance to a militia officially being recognized with the National Guard. But that doesn't make it right. Texas and Louisiana are a couple of states that have not done that. They still have state guards. Texas, though, maintains their state guard in a proper state of regulation, i.e. trained and equipped. Louisiana does not. It's on the books, but there's nothing being done with it, which we need to turn that around. That needs to be changed. So, again, there are absolutes in the Bill of Rights, but they're gonna couch that. They're gonna twist that. And the Constitution is not a living document. Chris Ann Hall's book I have here, Not a Living, Breathing Document, Reclaiming Our Constitution. There's some interesting quotes in here. From Alex de Tocqueville: "When the past no longer illuminates the future, the spirit walks in darkness." So, Ray Green's little breakthrough, and it was little from the standpoint of its overall effect, but it could be the hole in the dam as far as getting the Constitution out there to the people. And he won Tuesday night. Congratulations go to Ray, and to those members of this parish council that voted for that resolution to read it.
You want me to read this?
Yeah.
And so it's resolution number R-038-2014. A resolution of the Lafayette City Parish Council expressing support for the Common Sense 3 project and requesting that the legislature consider a requirement that elected officials receive a minimum of 1 hour education and training annually on the basic knowledge of the state and federal constitutions. And then it goes on to say, be it resolved, whereas the Common Sense 3 project mission statement is to restore common sensibility, awareness, understanding, and application of the most important document in U.S. history. And whereas a goal of the project is to spread awareness and understanding regarding the most basic constitutional rights. Whereas pursuant to Louisiana RS 421170, the Louisiana legislature has already chosen to require elected officials to receive a minimum of 1 hour of education and training annually on the Code of Governmental Ethics. Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, right, you know what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
And the Common Sense 3 project seeks to apply this same concept to ensure that elected officials receive a similar level of education and training on state and federal constitutions. Now, therefore, be it further resolved by the Lafayette City Parish, Section 1 of all the 4, and it goes into all that stuff.
Well, the point is, it's that hole in the dike. It's the beginning, we hope,
And it's,
of constitutional awareness.
William Terrio, and I have some of the interview from the TV. Ray got interviewed on TV last night. In a 5-3 vote, the Lafayette City Parish Council voted yes to the Common Sense 3 project, to the great surprise of our buddy Ray Green. It calls on the state legislature to consider a requirement for elected officials. The requirement is 1 hour educational training of the state and federal constitutions. The last time we went after this, we had taken an exam. And for some reason, our brothers on the bench didn't like that idea. According to the resolution the state legislature already requires, we read that, Councilman William Terrio authored the resolution, but it was Ray Green of Lafayette Parish who brought the idea before the council. Green says the council support proves residents can make a difference. Green, and this is an interview on Channel 10, does it make common sense for a person to go 300 hours plus expenses plus years of training just to be able to cut your toenails? But in order to be an elected official, all you got to do is go pay a filing fee and prove you lived in an area for a certain amount of time. That does not make common sense. Green explains having elected officials with basic knowledge of the Constitution is what makes sense. Councilman Terrio says it's up to the state legislature on what happens next. If they decide to move forward, it will put Louisiana up front amongst other states because nobody else does this. Councilman Gerald Villard voted yes to the resolution. Villard, 1 hour of training is very reasonable. You're not graded on it. It's about educating public officials. Think it's a great resolution. And then Green said, thank God we got it passed. Viva Lafayette. That shows me a lot. According to the city clerk, I'll read this. The 3 council members who voted against it were Councilman Jay Castillo, Brandon Shelvin, and Kenneth Boudreaux. Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Yeah. Now, you know why this was not necessary in the past? This wasn't necessary for our elected officials to have some sort of constitutional briefing, if you will, to be given some kind of formal class on the Constitution. Why? Because they already had a briefing, a basic knowledge of, therefore.
In school.
In school. Everybody did.
Mm-hmm.
Not
now.
Again, go back to what I read. When the past no longer illuminates the future, the spirit walks in darkness. And the spirit of this country is in darkness.
Well,
Because we have not learned from our past. Our future is questionable because of that.
When you look at the new, what they call push history books, they absolutely tender the fact that they don't want the students asking questions about the Constitution.
Mhm.
But that's Common Core.
Yeah. Common Core does more to further destroy constitutional knowledge in this country amongst the children. I'm not gonna need this anymore, I don't think.
And
Get
him
it out of
too.
the way.
There's nothing about American history in Common Core.
Yeah, there is.
But it's not,
It's watered down.
yeah.
It's not the version you and I grew up with,
No,
I
no,
guarantee
no.
you. I have some of that, a copy of that. Oh, I'm not supposed to.
You're not supposed to have that?
No. The mystery of Common Core is, we don't want you to know.
Let me, talk
Go
a
ahead
little
and
bit about
finish on
something
that.
else here on the Constitution. The Constitution's roots are twofold. One, of course, is the Holy Bible. The other is other documents that preceded it. Specifically, several documents from from English history, and one from our own, plus the Articles of Confederation. But the first document, our founding document, the unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. First of all, the title. The is capitalized, unanimous is not capitalized, declaration is capitalized, 13 and united are not capitalized, and states and America are capitalized. Okay? What this amounts to is that the founders were recognizing that 13 separate states, just as if it were England and France, came together. Let me read to you from the Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution.
I like that.
The Congress was, as Massachusetts John Adams put it, a meeting place of ambassadors. This is what a Congress originally meant, a meeting place of ambassadors. In fact, the word has always denoted assemblies of the representatives of sovereigns, as in the case of the Congress of Westphalia in the 17th century. It made sense then when Virginia's Richard Henry Lee stood up to move, in language given to him by the Virginia Convention, that Congress should declare, quote, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, unquote. Like the word Congress, the word state had a meaning in the 18th century that may be lost on us today. For a Virginia congressman to say that Virginia was a state was to put it on a par not with Brittany in France or Yorkshire in England, but with France and England. Congress responded by appointing a committee to draft a Declaration of Independence. Now, what if we had not been called states? What if this was the province of Louisiana,
Interesting.
right? The reason they called the 13 colonies states and everyone after that a state was because they were each independent and sovereign countries. Came together in a federation that they could get out of. They could leave that federation anytime they wanted. In fact, Virginia declared its independence on May 15, 1776, long before the Declaration of American Independence. Okay? And Virginia and two other states, which are in here somewhere, as a condition of their joining the 13 colonies, maintained the right to pull out of that loose association anytime they wanted to, which meant, under the rules of the Constitution, then, that any state had that right to do. Anytime they wanted to, they could pull out of this loose federation of states. States like England and France, not states like we think of them, Louisiana, Texas, etc. Okay? So, the Constitution was not a document to rule over a strong central government and its associated satellites like Louisiana, Texas, etc. It was a weak federal government, very weak. And of course, if you read the Constitution, you realize that. What has happened throughout history, of course, is that as especially the results of the Second Revolution, 1861-65 revolution and its aftermath, that the federal government in D.C. became a much stronger federation. And they used the power of the bayonet to acquire that power. They used the naked steel of the bayonet. Article 14 is the one that really locked it down. And Article 14 was ratified at the point of the bayonet. Okay? So, Article 14 is null and void on the face of it. Certain representatives were not allowed to vote in that, for that article. Other states which had ratified it pulled their ratification, New Jersey being premier amongst them, as I recall, and that was decided by the Secretary of State at the time that they couldn't pull their vote. Once they had approved it, they could not disapprove it. Well, that means once they had disapproved it, they could not approve it again. Once they voted for it, that was it. Their vote stood, whatever it was originally. But since they'd pulled out some of the votes, et cetera, they got the requisite number of votes to ratify the 14th Amendment. So now you hear that, oh, the states can't secede. You hear this and that about Article 14 of the 14th Amendment, rather, which, 14th Amendment, of all of them that were illegally, unconstitutionally passed, which there are others, specifically the one dealing with the Federal Reserve later on. But all of those are illegal, unconstitutional rather, unlawful. But that's another story for another day, but you need to be aware of that. Now, let me read to you from the NRA, America's First Freedom August edition. Tale of two professors. One of the most respected scholars of the U.S. Constitution, and an unwavering defender of the rights and liberties that our nation's founders recognized and enshrined, Jonathan Turley, professor at law at George Washington University. He was, among other things, his recognition of the Second Amendment as protecting an individual right taken in a very public break with many of his fellow liberals and legal academia. He's steadfast in defense of our systems of checks and balances between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. The framework provides the remarkable stability of our republic. Well, past tense.
Yeah.
It's no longer stable because of this very thing. It's becoming less and less stable. The other professor, who's self-anointed, who was once a reportedly undistinguished part-time law lecturer in Chicago by the name of Barack Obama. His constitutional views were summed up in a fundraising pitch to a group of his uber-wealthy campaign donors. In bragging that he could enact the constitutional amendment banning political speech by groups like the NRA, Obama said, quote, "Now I taught constitutional law. I don't tinker with the Constitution lightly." Unquote.
Really?
He doesn't tinker with it lightly. Okay, he applies
heavily.
the heavy hand of,
Yeah.
of the executive branch. Go get Jacob and tell him about that screen, would you please? We need to fix that. He just walked
Yeah,
in
the
again.
bullet holes that are in here.
Yeah. He doesn't need to tinker with the Constitution. He ignores it. Through the intervening years into his second term, there is an apt description of Obama's rule, that he has, quote, aggregated power to the point that it has created instability, unquote. Something that was never what the framers intended. Those are the words of Professor Turley, who supports some Obama policy goals but abhors and fears the president's destructive methods to force them on the American public through circumventing the other co-equal branches. So what are former Professor Obama's views on the Constitution and on the balance of powers? Most recently, he chided the Founding Fathers for creating a U.S. Senate with equal representation from each state. Yeah, I remember when he did that. As reported in the Washington Times, quote, Mr. Obama told a small group of wealthy supporters that there are several hurdles to keeping Democrats in control of the Senate and recapturing the House. One of those problems, he said, is the apportionment of 2 Senate seats to each state, regardless of population. Obviously, the nature of the Senate means that California has the same number of Senate seats as Wyoming. This puts us at a disadvantage, he said. So Obama would undo the great compromise of 1787, which created our true Republican form of government rather than a democracy. The House is apportioned according to population, which means today that highly urbanized and decidedly anti-Second Amendment states far outweigh the pro-Second Amendment states. That compromise made each state equal in power to the Senate and made the terms of senators 6 years instead of 2 years, as in the House, thus insulating senators from the intense public political fury of the moment. The Senate intentionally was established as a deliberative body where the predilections of the House could be cautiously debated and amended or fairly put to rest. It is a body in which the rights of the minority could be protected. The Senate was designed as a safety brake. In fact, that compromise was the very reason smaller states agreed to join under a common constitution. I'm going to come back to the Senate in a minute and what has happened to that, the intention of the founders. If you want to see what Obama has in mind, look at state legislatures, all apportioned according to population. The political machines of those big states rule everything. And those urban centers are the reason for draconian gun laws in New York, California, Maryland, and Connecticut, among others. We know Obama plans to trash the Second Amendment through executive action, ignoring his oath to defend the Constitution. Back to Professor Turley, quote, in testimony before Congress this year, he warned, quote, we are in the midst of a constitutional crisis with sweeping implications for our system of government. The framers created a system that was designed to avoid one principal thing, the concentration of power in any one branch. That concept, he said, was at a tipping point. The current threat to legislative authority in our system is comprehensive, spanning from misappropriation of funds to circumvention of appointments to negation of legislative provisions. Turley has repeatedly called for reining in the abuse of power of the Obama executive branch. And this author of this article, Jim Porter, couldn't agree more. The most direct way is at the ballot box where power is in our hands and in the hands of our fellow citizens. Not true. We'll come back to that. We can teach Obama a lesson that he can't ignore. Yeah, we must vote in November to change control of the Senate in the polling booths. Nothing could be more important to the restoration of the balance that has secured our liberty for so long, except that the ballot boxes are now controlled. They're now computerized, and they're controlled by people who control the counting of the ballots, the counting of the votes. To quote again Joe Stalin, it doesn't matter who votes. What matters is who counts the votes. So folks, don't count on the November elections to do anything. Okay, don't count on it. Although Pelosi today, or whenever that was, probably yesterday,
Last night.
Nancy Pelosi on Bill Maher's show on HBO. And when I heard about this, I looked it up, and it's still on demand. If you have that feature for HBO, the Bill Maher show, the latest one that is logged in, that is archived, if you will, almost at the beginning of the show.
You can go to YouTube also.
YouTube's got it? Okay. Pelosi and Bill Maher, which I don't remember how you spell Maher. It doesn't.
Maher.
Okay. But Pelosi basically was asked, well, what difference would it make if the Republicans won the Senate in November? And Pelosi said, well, this would be a major problem for the Democrats. She started out and then said, if the Republicans win the Senate, basically, it will probably be the end of society as we know it.
Gee.
With a straight face.
Yeah, with a straight face. Amazing.
So I'll defer my facial expressions for tomorrow night. So this is their attitude about this type of stuff. Now, go back to the Senate quickly. The article here, he mentions what the Senate was supposed to be. He didn't mention, though, in here, and shame on him for not mentioning it, is that the original Constitution called for the Senate to be elected by the state legislatures, not by the people, not by popular vote. That was not changed until late 1800s. Which amendment was that? One of the amendments, 17th Amendment, changed the election of the senators to popular vote. Okay?
They were appointed before.
They were appointed by the state legislatures. This was again to keep the Senate outside the realm of the political battles that the founders knew would happen when popular vote was involved in anything. Yes?
But also, it is more, that was more effect for a balance of powers.
Yeah.
The three segments of the federal government is not really the balance of power, because they're all in the federal government. It was the
Right.
institution of the Senate representing the states. The
Yeah.
House of Representatives represented the citizens.
Yeah.
And that was the balance of power. The states could tell the federal government, no.
And he's right. The original
Still
balance of powers was between the population and the states as political entities. Because the founders recognized democracy didn't work. As soon as the people realized they could vote themselves access to the public trough, democracy goes out the window. And so, if you don't have the Senate being elected by the people, instead they're elected by legislators in their home states, the states have control over a great aspect. This is also why, of course, he does mention that each state was equally represented in the Senate. And of course, Obama doesn't like that. He is a pure Democrat, small d Democrat of the socialist variety.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Lincoln wanted to, he was a Hamiltonian. Hamilton was against the
Go ahead, caller.
states.
Yeah,
Hello,
Hello?
how you doing?
good.
Good.
Are you guys whack jobs or just
Get rid of-
local whack jobs?
We'll be civil or we won't answer your questions.
What is whacked about what we've
I-
been talking about?
I don't know.
I don't believe he does.
I don't, he doesn't either.
Have another beer.
Yeah, go have another 6-pack and then go to bed.
Just to-
Turn the channel.
Just to make a point on the states and their position early on and later on, Hamilton was a monarchist.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted George Washington to be king and to appoint the governors of the states. Lincoln was a Hamiltonian, and he initiated the Civil War, or whatever you want to call it, to eliminate the power of the states.
Yeah.
Now, what a lot of people don't know is that Hitler was a fan of Abraham Lincoln, and thought, I mean, he talked about him and you know, really approved of his positions. Hitler, in Germany, there were federalized states.
Yeah.
And he railed about that and getting rid of them, and that's what he did. Lincoln was his mentor, so to speak.
Yeah, the German political setup was similar to what we have today, from the standpoint that the states had some power. They each had their own police force, for example, each had their own court system. And Adolf did away with that at the time. I think they're back pretty much to their original, what they were before the Second World War, between the wars. But in fact, their term is Bundesrepublik, which is Federal Republic of Germany. Now, let's see, what do we got? Oh, that's all? Okay. The Constitution has some problems, but we're not using the Constitution anymore. The federal government does not utilize
Oh, no.
very much of the Constitution. And then only when it suits their purposes. Obama, first of all, was not a constitutional law professor as implied in that article.
Exactly.
He was an adjunct lecturer
Yes.
that when somebody was sick or out of town or something and could not handle their class, they put him in there to just bloviate to the students to take up time. To call him a constitutional law professor would be, well,
Lie.
a lie, yeah. Yeah, okay, we'll call it a lie.
Can do that?
Yeah, we can call him, yeah.
Oh, my.
But read your Constitution.
Might get another phone call.
Oh, well, I've been called worse. The Constitution is very clear. It's not in Antarcticese. It's not in some language that's hard to read. Let's go to one that has been in the news a little bit lately. Emergency powers. Some people think that if there's an emergency in this country, that the president, all he has to do is activate one of these executive orders that we discussed last meeting. Let's see who we got here.
Go ahead, caller.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good.
I just want to tell you I keep up the good work, man. I feel like a lot of people don't read the Constitution, don't know what it's all about, and but that's pretty much it. Just keep up the good work, and I'm glad to see y'all doing this.
All
Well,
right, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Y'all have a good night.
You too.
And that reminds me, I needed to make the plug for Ray's constitutional class that he's doing regularly now. We talked about it last show. It's the first Tuesday, or second Tuesday of the month. What is it? Second Tuesday of the
Because
month.
the council don't meet that
Yeah,
night.
that's right, because the council doesn't meet that night, so you don't have any excuse for not showing up, councilman. Second Tuesday of the month at Thomas Park at, was it 6 or 6:30?
6.
6. Everybody needs to standardize on one time or the other. But anyway,
6.
we got a lot done last time. Ray did a good
Yeah, it
job
was
in his
really awesome.
presentation, and he uses as his guide the Citizens Rule Book that we have been using for a long time. This book, 30 years. I've probably been using it for 30 years at least.
Really?
Maybe closer to 35.
It's almost as old as I am.
Yeah, right, you should, in your dreams. But the caller reminded me of this. So, folks, anybody can go to these classes. Anybody can learn about the Constitution. It's a study guide, if you will, to help you understand it. So what I would recommend is that you get a copy. Those that were there last meeting all have a copy now of this very edition. And go through it, jot down questions, and we'll discuss it at that next meeting.
I mean, that meeting was a mixture.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
There's a mixture of the public was there, all ages.
police, councilmen.
Yeah. So, but I want to talk about emergency powers real quickly from this politically incorrect guide to the Constitution. Justice Charles Evans Hughes, which I don't know anything about him other than some of his quotes, which are real good. Hopefully he's on the up and up. But this is correct. Emergency does not create power. Emergency does not increase granted power or remove or diminish the restrictions imposed upon power granted or reserved. The Constitution was adopted in a period of grave emergency. Yeah. Its grants of power to the federal government and its limitations of the power of the states were determined in the light of emergency, and they are not altered by emergency, unquote. So there's plenty of way to continue government. Continuity of government does not stop suddenly because of emergencies. And it only stops, or it only has a hiccup, et cetera, because of what the people in power, the president, the Congress, the courts, in the case of the federal government, and then the state governments, of course, how they react to an emergency. And the 9/11-01 debacle is a classic example of that. The Patriot Act was languishing in Congress. It was already written, folks. When 9/11-01 occurred, they pulled the Patriot Act out, dusted it off, and threw it at Congress with some additions and said, we've also got some more stuff we're going to add to it, but y'all go ahead and vote on it anyway. And the willing sheeple and zombies in Congress voted it in. It was almost unanimous. The smart ones like Ron Paul and a few others who said, whoa, hold on here. Let's step back. This is not warranted by any emergency. The powers granted to the federal government, not rights, powers, okay? The money that Congress threw at the problem, et cetera, gave them the capability of forming this new dictatorial branch of government called the Homeland Tyranny Department. Oh, excuse me, Department of Homeland Security.
Oh,
Security equals tyranny in this case. So no emergency power is granted by the Constitution, except in time of certain major problems when habeas corpus can be suspended. But even that, when Lincoln used the War for Southern Independence, the Second Revolution, as an excuse to suspend habeas corpus, and even put without trial several Southern sympathizers under penalty of death, had the war continued very much longer, they would have been executed. But the war ended, and the Supreme Court got a chance to review these cases and said, no, every one of Lincoln's emergency doctrines was thrown out by the Supreme Court. But while the war was going on, they didn't do that any more than they threw out the internment camps for the Japanese Americans that Roosevelt instituted during the Second World War. So, but these emergency powers are unconstitutional. Remember that, folks. Remember it very well. That's what Article 2 of the Bill of Rights is all about. Okay. You have anything you want to sum up?
well, just that the Constitution class is something I think you can bring your teenaged
Oh, definitely. You need
kids
to.
to
You need
when
to.
Ray does that. We're gonna make that, I'm gonna try and get all the details from Ray, make it an event on the Patriot site. But it was enlightening, the police department was there. Part of the reason this came about was because of the police department. And the police chief saying, yeah, our officers need to understand that. So, we're in a period where if they're not gonna teach them in school, we need to start teaching outside
Well,
of
that's the
school.
purpose of this whole show. For 20 years, that's been the purpose of this show. There'd be no need for this program if the people of this country, of this area, were educated in reality, not educated in the kind of garbage like I just heard about the Chinese this week. Some Chinese city has instituted a texting lane in their pedestrian areas so that their texters don't run over people, et cetera, which Jim just had somebody do that. We're gonna get some signs done up for them when you see them doing this stuff. But that's how it's gotten, it's
I
gotten.
just
in
saw
such-
another case this evening when I was going to my other thing at 6 o'clock.
I mean, how stupid is it for somebody who's texting to run into somebody else and then blame the one they ran into for not getting out of their way?
Yeah, we have to tell that story
We'll tell them in the next hour.
next
Yeah,
hour.
Yeah. But, and I'll mention the Chinese texting lane again,
Yeah.
because this is bizarre. The world has gone nutso.
Just go through UL now, you got bike paths and.
Yeah, well, the UL's gonna have to have a texting path next to the bike
Yeah,
path.
Next to the bike
And they're